Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. My guest today is New York City Police Chief Rodney Harrison. Chief Harrison grew up in Queens, New York, and he didn't think he grew up to be a police officer. In fact, he said growing up he had some negative interactions with the police, but he did go on to become a police officer, then a sergeant, then a lieutenant, then a captain, then an inspector, and now Chief of Police of New York City. Chief Harrison's here with me now. Chief, welcome to American Voices.
Senator, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
So tell me about growing up in Queens. What was your childhood like, and what did you want to do when you grew up, when you were a kid?
It was all about sports. Growing up in Jamaica, Queens, Rochdale Village, myself and my friends would meet up outside every single day, and depending on what time of the year it was, we would compete in sports. If it's anything from bike riding to going to PS80 to play basketball to playing football in one of the places where it might have been grass to playing anything that was available to us. We really were myself and all my friends were very well rounded in sports. That seemed to be our world, as making sure we competed every single day, and that's what it was like growing up in the I'll say the inner city is engaging with your friends, playing sports, and really having a good time. And because sports was one of the things that really was the backbone of my childhood, I always grew up wanting to go into like some type of physical education and maybe being a gym instructor and taking that line of work into becoming the athletic director. So that's why I eventually attended Springfield College in Massachusetts with the major of physical education.
Oh, that's great. So are you still in shape?
I'm in decent shape. I'm 52 years old now. I still play basketball about twice a week.
Oh, no, Chief, you can't.
Yeah, the knees are still hanging in there for now. So we'll see. Yeah, I'm still playing.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous to play basketball when you're 52.
Well, that's what it does. That's what I do to keep myself active and stay in shape. I play a lot of racquetball. Believe it or not, play tennis, a little bit of stickball every once in a while with some of my friends. So instead of running 5 miles a day, I find myself being active and competing and playing sports.
So you may be the chief of police in New York City, but you're still the kid growing up in Queens playing sports.
That's exactly what it is. I've always been a competitor. And it's also helped me have success in the NYPD, which is trying to be the best I can be to whatever my goal is, be it developing community relations or whatever it may be, fighting crime. I think it's important that that competitive nature transfer over to what I'm doing today, which is protecting New York City.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, as a child, you said you had some negative interactions with the police. What happened?
Yeah, so, a couple of incidents where I've been pulled over by police officers and pulled out my car and had officers, put their foot in my back and, be condescending and talk negative towards me. And, what I thought was unnecessary and very unprofessional. It really turned me off, Senator, to law enforcement. That's what happens. It takes a couple of negative experiences, and we think a whole organization is doing the same types of character towards other people. So I wasn't a big fan of law enforcement. I wasn't a big fan of the New York City Police Department growing up.
So how did you decide to join the police force?
So there was a time frame, Senator, where I had to do my fifth year of college. Struggled a little bit in my first year. I was playing a little bit of college basketball, so my grades weren't where they're supposed to be. And I had to do a fifth year. And my father, who was actually a bus driver and civil servant, he suggested, why don't I try out this cadet corps, and that he wasn't going to pay for my fifth year of college. So it was either I go out and get a job and pay for myself, or I try this cadet corps program, which is an internship that they have in the NYPD where they pay for your college tuition, but yet at the same time, you're working in local precincts and helping out with administrative things that need to be taken care of, as well as going out in the field and working with the community. And it was an eye-opener, Senator. So I'm going to tell you a funny story, is there was a cops and kids basketball game, and they asked me to participate in it. And we ended up playing against some young kids from the neighborhood. And the game went well, and it was a great interaction. But the one thing that really opened my eyes is how I was able to mentor these kids into, hey, staying out of trouble, hey, not go down the route of joining a gang, staying away from drugs, and a host of other things. And that really kind of showed me the positives of the New York City Police Department. That showed me the positives of joining this organization, and that, that the interactions that I had back in the day growing up, I shouldn't be painting the whole police department with that broad brush. And that's one of the missions or the messages I get out now. Don't let one incident that you may have with somebody in law enforcement turn you away or have you have a disgust towards law enforcement. Don't paint everybody with that broad brush. The truth of the matter is this: most police officers are out there working their tail off to make this a better city, to make people safe, and to strengthen relationships.
So let me ask you, so you had this great experience with the Cadet Corps, but then you got to make a decision. Do you go into the police department as a profession? What did you like about it that got you to make that decision?
The mentoring part. When I saw that we could work with the youth and really give back and help people, is really, really what opened my eyes. Unfortunately, I didn't have any family members in law enforcement. I didn't know anybody within NYPD, but that internship with the Cadet Corps was something that really showed me, hey, this is something I want to pursue, and it's something I want to do for the rest of my career. And it's really been a blessing ever since 1991.
So were there things that surprised you about the police that you hadn't realized as a civilian? Yeah,
it's not an easy job. You never know when something could go wrong, but I will say this: you just work around a lot of great men and women who do the right thing. I'm going to be honest with you, they put their life on the line, going to some of these calls, some of these jobs where there's a need for police assistance, and you never know what you're going to turn into going around the corner. So I really have taken a major love towards the New York City police officer, the work that they do to protect all of New York residents as well as people that come and visit the city.
Give me a couple examples of you never know what you're going to find coming around the corner.
Yeah, so, you may be going to a call for a domestic violence job. And it may sound somewhat routine, but once you get there, you never know how one of the individuals, be it the husband or the wife, may be very aggravated and pull out a weapon and charge the police officers. And now the police officers have to do what they have to do to stop the threat. So that's just one of the many unfortunate incidents that police officers have to find ways to diffuse a situation like that. But, it may come over routine, but once you get there, you never know where you're finding yourself putting your life on the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said your favorite time working in the police department, aside from being chief, was working undercover. Why was that your favorite time?
Being an undercover is arguably the most dangerous assignment within the NYPD, but a lot of great work, a lot of rewarding work was done by myself, by my partners, by the investigators, really cleaning up a lot of communities, getting drug dealers and bad individuals that were plaguing communities off the street. Just being able to be a part of precision policing, targeting the individuals that are carrying guns or are selling large quantities of drugs that were poisoning some of our unfortunate communities, and just being a part of holding individuals accountable through the work of, going up and buying drugs. It really was special, and I'm very, very fond of anybody that goes into choosing to become an undercover. I salute them because it's arguably something where a situation could go wrong very, very quickly. Back in 1995, my partner was shot in a buy and bust operation, and it was a terrifying moment. And it just shows you how a regular going out in the street and just trying to buy drugs can or easily and go wrong, where you're finding yourself combating in a shootout with an armed assailant. So it's something that we have to continue to do. But in order for us to make this a safer city, we have to engage the drug dealing and people that are selling guns and things of that nature.
But what is it like? Give us a feel like, we're with you and you're on the job. Is it like you see working undercover? Is it like you see on TV? Or is it completely different?
It's completely different. The one thing I will say is that, you see a lot of television shows that somewhat portray the NYPD police officer. And listen, I don't want to sit here and say they get it right or they get it wrong. But being undercover, you don't know that the person's a cop. And, sometimes these undercovers go out there without a gun. They're not wearing a bulletproof vest. They have to find a way to go up to individuals that are selling drugs or selling guns and be able to get that dealer to buy in that you're not a cop. And that's not easy because, too often we've seen undercover officers shot and some even killed. Sean Carrington in the late 90s was involved in a shooting incident and he was killed. And it's something that took a toll on our police department. Anytime one of our officers unfortunately pays the ultimate sacrifice, but being undercover, hands down, is the most dangerous job in the department.
In undercover, do you work primarily on drugs and guns, or are there wider applications?
It's mainly narcotics and guns, depending on where and the information that we get. Sometimes we'll have somebody introduce us to a dealer, or sometimes we have to walk up to a door and try to buy drugs and be able to sell ourselves to the drug dealer that, hey, listen, I'm not a police officer. So it's not an easy skill set. It's something that only the brave do, but it works because once we are able to get into the drug dealer, we're able to build a case against them and make sure that we bring it to the district attorney to prosecute them and put them away to jail for a long time.
So that the undercover gathers evidence, is that right? And how does he do that, or she? Do they photograph things? Do they watch the operation as it moves? Do they report when something's going to happen? How do you gather information?
Well, it's funny, Senator, because there's a lot of moving parts that I rather not talk about because any individual that's into the criminal enterprise of selling drugs or selling guns, I don't want to give away our information of how we go about it. So if you don't mind, I'm going to humbly request if we could avoid going down that road.
No problem. So let's go to another topic. So tell me, how did you find out you'd become the New York City police chief? Do you remember when you first told your family and how they reacted?
Yes. I received a phone call from the mayor de Blasio, and he's pretty much informed me that I was going to be the next chief of department of the New York City Police Department. First thing I did was I called my best friend, which was my wife, and I told her the great news, and I had her put everybody on a conference call, my 3 daughters, and I pretty much said, hey, listen, Daddy just got information that I'm going to be the next chief of department, and I was currently at the time the chief of detectives. I was actually the first black chief of detectives in the NYPD, so I really have had a blessed career. I've been in this position for about 5 months now. It's feels like 2 years, but it's been a long run. But I've been blessed, and the only way I've been able to get here is from the support of my family, who have been very patient and understanding with the long hours and days that I have to put here at work.
Speaking of your family, I understand your 3 daughters are planning to join the force, and that your wife is also in the police force. So is that correct?
In the police academy. I have 3 daughters altogether. 2 of them are in the academy right now. I want to make sure that I put them in a precinct where they can make a difference, but yet at the same time learn how to be a cop and learn how to do it right. My youngest one's playing basketball at Wake Forest, and my wife is a retired lieutenant. She retired maybe about 5 years ago. She retired out of housing training, so she's had a pretty impressive career. She was a special assignment lieutenant, and 24 years in the NYPD. She really has changed a lot of lives around. Her position that she is most proud of is working in candidate assessment, and that's a big title or position within NYPD, making sure we get the right candidates to come in the police department. And she did the screening to make sure that the officers that we do choose to put this uniform on were the right ones, and it was very rewarding for her. And I used to have late night conversations regarding some of the struggles that she had to go through, but it was good support going back and forth.
So, as a leader, what did you learn about leadership and your leadership style when you became chief of police?
It's important that we are transparent. It's very important that we are holding our police officers accountable. And there has to be a connection, a connectivity with the communities that we're here to protect and serve. So that's like the biggest thing for me is, that connection with the different communities that we work with, and how do we receive their concerns, and how do we address their issues has been very, very important to me. Prior to me being the chief of department, I was the chief of detectives, and before that I was the chief of patrol. And I was one of the executives that oversaw the new procedure or policy we had in regards called the neighborhood policing. And it was very, very powerful because it really made cops make that connection with the communities within a certain area or community that they had ownership of. And it's really paying off. It's helping build the bridge that unfortunately is not that easy sometimes in a day and age. But it's working out, and it's something that we're going to continue to do going through this recovery phase coming out of the pandemic.
You know, you're the chief of New York City. Of course, it's an iconic place in the world. It's incredibly diverse. It's rich, powerful, poor. It's everything. It's a microcosm of life. When did you feel most connected to this city?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with, I'm going to go back to my time as a chief of patrol. And one of the things that we did was what's called a pilot program for our neighborhood policing philosophy. I had to go to every single precinct and let the community know, hey, we have this new policy that we're doing, neighborhood policing, what the cops are going to be asked to do, what we're going to ask of you. And I was able to get the feedback from a lot of different communities regarding the positives of neighborhood policing, some of the negatives that came along with it, and how can we fix it to better serve the residents of New York City. And that's where I really felt connected. And let me say something, Senator. I worked in every single borough. I worked from everything from Staten Island to Queens, worked all the way in the Bronx and different parts of Brooklyn. I've been all over. I've been all over the city. You know, I did some time in Manhattan. This is a great city, but just overseeing and putting in this new philosophy, neighborhood policing, and making sure that the community knew that there needs to be a connection in order for us to make this a better and safer city. I think that's really opened my eyes to say, hey, this is something very, very good that we have going, and this is something that I'm very, very proud of. And that's when I really felt as though I had an understanding of what it takes to protect the city.
It's just such common sense, isn't it? If you're a police officer and you have the community working with you, it's so much easier than if you're trying to do everything yourself.
Absolutely. You know, we need the community's help. I say it all the time. You know, this can't be just an NYPD issue if there's a spike in crime or if there's other quality of life issues that are going on. In order for us to have success, we have to have a connection with the communities that we're here to serve. And this is such a diverse city, and we want to make sure our police department mirrors the diversity that we're here to serve. So that's why it's important that we have officers from all different types of cultures, from all types of religions, from all different types of faiths. And you see the positives that have come from it, because as long as we keep our police department diverse, we're able to protect and serve such a diverse city.
So what do we do about bad cops? I mean, like in anything, politics or basketball or whatever, they're good and bad.
There's no tolerance. There's no tolerance for officers who embarrass the brand, embarrass the patch, embarrass the shield. You know, we have no problems being transparent. We have no problems holding cops accountable. We have no problem taking cops off the streets and putting them in administrative or even have to fire them. I don't think there's anybody in the NYPD that's going to fight that. I think, you know, if there's somebody who is involved in corruption or a bad police officer, no one wants to work with that person. Cops want to do what they have to do to protect one another, make sure they're there to help protect the city. And if somebody is doing something that's going to tarnish the badge, then no one wants to partner up with that individual. And we've seen it. We've seen the stories. And none of the unions themselves, nobody's going to fight us getting rid of a bad police officer.
So, but then on the flip side, how do we recognize great police officers?
So there's different ways. There's different ways. Cops quite often want to be rewarded. And one of the best ways we reward cops is giving them the detective shields or putting them on an investigative track, putting them in a position where they could thrive and make more over time. I think that's very, very important. That if you have a police officer that is above and beyond, let's make sure we identify who they are and put them on track of becoming a advanced investigator, giving them the detective shield, put them on an investigative track, put them in a unit where they eliminate like what they might have been doing before they've come on the police department. We have officers that used to ride horses, so we'll maybe give them a chance to go to mounted. We have officers that may have a pilot license. We'll put them in aviation. We have officers that have skills when it comes to computers, so we'll put them in computer crimes, auto larceny. I mean, we have special victims. If you want to work with individuals that happen to unfortunately be a victim from some type of sex crime. I mean, there's so many units where you can help people and be a part of a team that you really like to investigate or do from your prior career before you came to the police department. And working with the youth is another one. We have a phenomenal community affairs team that's always out there strengthening those relationships with the different communities that we're here to protect. So the one thing I love about the NYPD, we have so many different units that individuals who are above and beyond will give them an opportunity to go to those units that they want to strive for.
There's an ebb and flow of crime. I mean, the 1960s are different than the 70s, are different than the 90s, are different than today. And as you look at New York City and the challenge of crime today, what do you think is the biggest problem?
So we got to.
Or what keeps you up? What keeps you up at night?
Yeah. So we got to take a look at some of the legislations that have come down that made things a little bit more difficult for us. The worst thing in the world is somebody commits a crime and they're not held accountable for it. And I was in a meeting yesterday with a organization, and one of their complaints was, how does somebody get locked up and then get out the same day? Like, how does that happen? And, we have to take a look at some of our elected officials and make sure that decisions that they're making, let's run it by the NYPD. Let's run it by the public servants, the individuals who are doing this type of work. And let's make sure that we understand that you can't make a decision without bringing the law enforcement organization to the table. We've seen it too often where criminals are committing crimes and not being held accountable, and they'll commit the crimes over and over and over again. And that's where one of the struggles that we're seeing that we need to fix. We can sit here and talk about the bail reform, where, individuals who commit a crime, who historically in the past might have been held in on bail, but because of bail eligibility cases, non-bail eligibility cases, they're able to get right back out again. The discovery law, where the district attorney, or the prosecutor, I should say, has to turn over all the evidence to the defense attorney. That's including witnesses' names, that's including complaining victims' names, and that information could go to the defendant, which of course may lead to some type of intimidation, and a couple other things that have made our job a little bit more difficult than we would like it to be. But those are the two that really have empowered criminals to continue to commit crimes, and as well as maybe intimidate witnesses or complainants so they can not be held accountable for the crimes that they commit.
So these require specific legislative changes in order for that to end, correct?
Listen, the one thing I will say is the NYPD were resilient. Listen, we can sit here and complain about certain things, but sometimes we just have to make adjustments and go forward with what we have to deal with.
That's what a professional does.
That's what listen, we're the greatest police department in the country. We're prepared for things that are not going to make our job easier, but we'll find a ways to continue to get the job done. And listen, we had a phenomenal year in 2018 and 2019. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit. Then we had the George Floyd protests that made things very, very difficult. Now that we're in a recovery phase, we're slowly and gradually, and it's not going to happen overnight. But the violence is slowing down, and we're getting back to the part where courts are opening up, and we're looking at individuals that are carrying illegal firearms being held accountable. And I think that has to be the direction we need to go. If you happen to commit a crime, if you happen to carry a legal firearm, you need to be held accountable. And once that starts happening, and once we start seeing that, you'll see a trickling effect throughout the city for anybody that wants to commit a crime. So it's a work in progress, but I'm very optimistic that we're going to turn this around.
There's more of my conversation with Chief Rodney Harrison.
You have to be able to have fun. A lot of chops are being broken.
I mean, police officers have sense of humor?
Yeah, we do, believe it or not.
It's coming up next. Stay with us. I'm Bill Bradley. We're back now on American Voices, and we're continuing my conversation with New York City Police Chief Rodney Harrison. So, Chief, could you tell me, what do you say to people, because we have listeners all over the country who are from Kansas or Arizona or Alabama, and they have an impression of New York that, it's really dangerous in New York. You're in charge of combating the danger. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to come to New York. Come to New York and enjoy the great things that New York provides. Everything from our parks to our skyscrapers to just a lot of the great amenities that New York City has. And listen, unfortunately, there's going to be incidents that the media is going to sensationalize, but the truth of the matter is this is one of the safest big cities in the country, and the NYPD, we're working hard to continue to make it even safer. So, I know one incident is bad enough, and that could be intimidating, but the truth of the matter is this: if you just take a look at the numbers, we're headed in the right direction. We're trending downwards, and we're really doing our darndest to make this a really, really safe city again.
So if you were going to compare, say, the 1970s or 80s with 2018 and 19, the change was so dramatic.
It was.
Can you give us a flavor? I don't know how you'd measure it, but...
Yeah, well, we always look at pretty much certain crime categories and say, hey, how we're doing versus other years. So if you just take a look at shooting incidents, in 2018, we had 452 shootings. In 2019, we had 470. This year, right now, we're at 942. So it's been a big spike in shooting incidents. But I will say this: if you just take a look at the last 2 months versus last year, our shooting numbers are going down. And you know why it's going down? Because the courts are opening up. We're doing a lot more precision policing. We've identified a lot of gang members that are committing the crimes. We're building cases against them, and we're getting them off the streets. And as long as the courts are opened up, as long as the district attorneys are willing to prosecute the cases, and listen, our job is a lot more difficult than in the 1970s and the 1980s and even the 2018s and 2019s, because we had to bring a lot more to the case than we might have had to bring 2 or 3 years ago. But we're willing to do it, and we'll find whatever evidence we need to present it to the district attorney so we can hold people accountable for the crimes that are being committed, unfortunately.
So what's been the most heartbreaking moment for you on the force?
We could always talk about some of our officers that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. That's always been a heartbreaking. In 2020 and even now, even in 2021, we've lost multiple. I think the number is 58, 59 people to COVID. That's really has taken a toll on the men and women in the police department. But the one thing that probably was the most trying time in my career was back in 1995 when my partner was shot. He almost lost his life. And me having to tell my partner's wife that your husband's in the hospital and he may not make it was probably the darkest day of my 30-year career in the police department. So, dangerous job. The police officers that put on this badge, to me, are absolute superheroes. I could do nothing but use superlatives about the great work that's being done throughout the city. And one of my biggest and most important goals as a chief of department is making sure I support the New York City police officer.
Mm-hmm. So is there a funniest moment?
30 years in the police department, you have to be able to have fun. A lot of chops are being broken.
I mean, police officers have sense of humor?
Yeah, we do, believe it or not. And trust me, in this position, I give it out, but I also have to take it as well because, if I do happen to have a moment where it's not my brightest moment, I will get my chops broken by my team. So I don't have one individual incident. But I will say this: it's great coming to work because you have to have a sense of humor. You have to be able to come to work and laugh. And there'll be a time for business where it's not a laughing matter, where we got to get out there and handle our business. But there's also a time where we could joke and break each other's chops and enjoy a moment. So that's what the NYPD is about. 35,000 of us. We're a family. And families, unfortunately, with that, there's going to be times where we're going to make fun of one another.
So let me ask you, what is fulfilled in you by doing this job?
So there's a human factor, Senator. The human factor is, what can I do to make people's lives better? I think it's important that me being in this position, me being in charge of the largest police department in the country, I take away how I was raised, which is treat people with fairness, be kind, be nice, and make sure I trickle that down to my police officers. It's a very, very difficult job. There's going to be times that we come to work and it's not going to be the best of days, but we have to find ways to make sure we treat people with the utmost respect. And that's how I've been in my 30-year career. I've always treated people with the fairness that they deserve, and I expect that of my police officers. And if they don't do that, then they're going to hear from me either way or another through coming to my office or making sure I trickle it down to the supervisors.
Chief Harrison, thank you for being here on American Voices and giving us all this time and your very, very busy and important schedule.
Senator, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and God bless.
I've been speaking with New York City Police Chief Rodney Harrison. To find out more, visit us on Facebook. Our show page is American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley. Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.